Zielinski from Samba New York here, and in this lesson I'll be teaching you two classic viradas or fills that you can play on a single surdo in a small group samba context, such as a roda de samba, which is a circle of samba musicians, often around a table, or a samba or pagode band. If you're newer to the surdo, I highly recommend that you check out all the other videos that I posted previously to the channel focused on a single surdo in a small group samba context before watching this video, so you don't get confused. Once you've done all that, then I invite you to come back here and join us for this lesson. All right, so this lesson is more advanced, so be prepared. All right, so before we jump into the subject matter, let's address the question, what is a virada? So the Portuguese term virada can be translated literally into English as turnaround, but this term can have a very different meaning depending on the context in which it's being used within the samba world. So for example, in a carnival samba setting, for example, in the samba schools of Rio de Janeiro in the baterias, the term virada is typically used to refer to a specific rhythmic figure that goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, tagarakacha, chum chum. And this rhythmic device is typically used to start the samba rhythm, to stop the samba rhythm, or as a transition between sections of the song. For example, the samba enredo or theme samba, which is the form of the samba that the samba schools perform for carnival. Now this is in a carnival samba setting. Outside the carnival samba setting, in a small group samba context, the term virada is typically used to refer to something completely different. It usually refers to a particular kind of variation, not a specific variation, not a specific rhythm, but a particular kind of variation. So let's take a step back here for a moment and review the kinds of variations that I taught in the two previous videos that I posted to the channel. In those two lessons, I covered 4 different typical variations, but in all of those cases, those variations are usually played while the rest of the band is playing. So for example, if I'm playing on the surdo, my basic pattern, and then I decide to play a variation, in that case, the rest of the band is still playing. That variation does not happen solo. It doesn't happen, in a solo moment. It happens while the rest of the band is playing. In this case, I use this particular variation to mark the end of a 4-measure phrase. It could be used in other ways, but that's a very typical way it can be used. So these kinds of variations that I taught in the previous 2 lessons are often used to mark the end of a phrase, maybe to mark the beginning of a phrase or the middle of a phrase. But the important point here is that the rest of the band is playing. For the virada, by contrast, the virada happens typically, we can translate virada in this case as a fill, as in a drum fill. In this case, it usually happens when either the band is completely stopped and the surdo or whichever instrument is playing the virada plays solo without any of the other instruments playing, or it's played when fewer of the instruments are playing. But in both cases, it really stands out more than those other kinds of variations I taught in the previous 2 lessons. And it's used as a kind of a call or chamada, which is a signal for the entire band to come either back in or to come in the first place. All right. So those are 2 typical scenarios in which the virada is used. It can be used to start the band, either from silence or when fewer instruments are playing, or it can be used when the band's already playing and it stops and there's an empty space in the music, for example, 1 measure, and then one instrument plays a fill, a virada, and then the rest of the band comes back in again. Okay, so those are 2 common scenarios for the virada in which the virada is used. But again, the important point that I want you to remember is that it's a very emphatic moment. So it's usually not the kind of variation that you would just play willy-nilly. You would usually work it out with your band when, which instrument is going to play a virada and when. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily work out the virada ahead of time. You might just know that you have a space to play a virada at this moment and you can improvise it. That's perfectly okay too. But I would recommend learning some typical viradas to start with and then using that as a jumping off point to start creating your own viradas. But in any case, I'm going to teach you 2 classic viradas here And this first one is great to start the band off because it's only a 2-beat fill, a 2-beat virada. So if the band stops for a full measure, you know, this one would only fill 2 beats of that 4-beat measure, right? So it could be done, but this one is probably more commonly used to start the band off, either from silence or when a smaller number of musicians are playing. And it goes like this: 1, 2, 3. So the first 2 beats are silent. On beat 3, we have our surdo muted here, and we're going to play this stroke, which is a buried stroke, if you will. We're going to mute the drum with our left hand. Instead of playing a regular rebound stroke, regular muted stroke, we're going to strike the head of the surdo with our mallet, and we're going to bury the mallet into the head, and we're not going to let it bounce. We're not going to let it rebound. Okay? So that's beat 3. The E of 3 is going to be a rim click, but it's not going to be the kind of rim click that I taught you while you're playing your basic pattern, which is a lighter rim click. And for that, I'm just lifting my wrist like this, and I'm allowing the end of the mallet to lightly touch the rim. This other rim click, we have our mallet buried into the head, and you could play it a number of different ways. You can play it, some players like to swivel their mallet out like this, away from them, and I've released my grip a little bit. I have a little more space here in my hand, and I push the handle of the mallet into the rim. And then upon impact, I release, and I just use the flat of my hand to push the handle in. So you don't have to slam it in there, but it is a louder, more emphatic kind of rim click. Okay? So 3, E, and then the and is going to be left hand, and the is going to be another rim click. So it's going to be 3, E, and 3, E, and Now, you could also play the rim click when you're in this position. You can go 3, E. You could just leave it in the same position and just rock it back. But it helps to have a little more space to kind of throw it down. Otherwise, you might be, if you do it like this, you might get yourself caught on one of the tuning rods here. So just experiment with it, see what works for you. But it's going to be 3, E, and And then beat 4 is going to be left hand on 4, open tone on the and of 4. That open tone is a pickup note, and it's the boom of the famous boom box, which, if you don't know, is one of the typical ways to start the samba rhythm, usually played on the surdo or the tantan. So the boom is an open tone on the and of 4, and the box is the next beat 1, which is a closed tone, a closed note, closed stroke. All right? So the boom of the boom box is a signal for the rest of the band to come in on the box. So it's going to be, so this virada ends with a boom box. That's quite typical. All right, so we have 2 empty beats, 1, 2, and then 3, E, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, E, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, E, and 4, and 1. Okay, let's put this into context. So let's play this virada to start. And then we're going to play 3 measures of our basic pattern. I'm going to play the version with the rim clicks and the extra note on the and of 2, extra open tone. And then on the 4th measure, we're going to play our virada again, and then we'll do 3 more measures of our basic pattern, and then end on beat 1 of the 4th measure. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is, but I'll demonstrate it here. Play along with me. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's do it at a faster tempo. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. So one suggestion is These viradas that I'm teaching you are just like any variation, but especially with these viradas, I wouldn't suggest just kind of throwing them in willy-nilly into the music wherever. I wouldn't suggest doing that with any variation, but especially if you want to play within the style. These viradas tend to be worked out ahead of time. So, or even if you're improvising virada, at least the space or the moment that you're going to play the virada in the music is usually worked out ahead of time with the other band members. So for example, if you're in your own samba band and you'd like to play this virada, what I would suggest doing is maybe just using this virada to start the band off, right, as a kind of a call. So let's say that you have a 4-measure intro with cavaquinho and pandeiro. For example, this is just an example of what you can do. And then in the 4th measure, you can play the virada, and that signals everyone to come in. That's one possibility. You can. What I suggest you do is do a lot of listening, do a lot of watching of videos, watch other surdo players, see what they do, see how they use this particular virada, see how they use other viradas, and use that as a jumping off point. But the important thing is that I would definitely suggest working out when you play a virada, and at least when you're starting off, which virada you're going to play ahead of time with the other musicians in your band. All right, let's get into the second virada. This one can be used either to start off the band or when there's a space in the music, because it's a full measure long, and so if there's a 1-measure break in the music, it's a great virada to play for that. And this one is going to be, it's a translation of a classic virada or chamada or call invented by Ubirani of Grupo Fundo de Quintal. And it goes like this. 1 on the repique de mão. It comes from the repique de mão. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so that's this classic virada or chamada on the repique de mão, and we're going to translate that onto the surdo. Okay, so if you have a band with repique de mão and surdo, maybe the repique de mão could play it. Maybe another time the surdo could play it. Right? So there are a lot of possibilities. All right. So this one is a little more complicated. So on beat 1, we're going to have an empty pulse. On the E of 1, we're going to have a bounce stroke, just like we have a buzz stroke, just like when we play a buzz stroke on the caixa or repinique or even on the tamborim with a wooden stick. We can let it bounce multiple times. We can do the same thing with the mallet on the surdo, but because it's a mallet and because the tuning of the surdo is generally a lot lower than the caixa and repinique and tamborim, it's not going to bounce as much, but it's still a buzz stroke. Okay, so you just kind of let it bounce multiple times. I kind of release my ring and pinky finger from the mallet to give it a little more room to bounce. So we're going to go 3 E and da, 3 E and da. Okay, so the E of 3 is the buzz stroke, the and is the left hand, and the is a buried stroke, if you will. Okay, which we learned from the last virada. So 3 E, 1 E and da, and then beat 2 is going to be 2 E, 2 E and da. No, let's see. 1 E and da. Sorry, that's it. So it's going to be 2 E and da. Okay, so it's going to be ring click, left hand, buried stroke, ring click. So beats 1 and 2 together, we have 1 E and da, 2 E and da, 3, 4. 1 E and da, 2 E and da, 3, 4. 1 E and da, 2 E and da, 3, 4. 1 E and da, 2 E and da, 3, 4. Beats 3 and 4 are going to be like this. Beat 3 is going to be left hand. So it's, let's see, 1. That's the continuation of it. So it's going to be 3 E and a 4 and 3 E and a 4 and. So we have a buzz stroke on the a left hand on the 3, a buzz stroke on the E, 3, E, and another left hand on the and then a muted stroke on the So 3, E, and 4, and the 4 and is the same as the 4 and in the previous virada. So it's just the boombox. 4, boombox, and then we start the basic pattern. Okay, so putting it all together, we have 3, 4, 1. 1. Okay, so let's play this exercise. We're going to play this virada, and then we're going to play 3 measures of our basic pattern. We're going to play the virada again, 3 measures of basic, and then end on beat 4 of the next measure. Okay, nice and slow. 3, E, and 4, E, and 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, my little pad came off. Okay, so let's do this now at a faster tempo. All right. If you don't have it yet, pause the video here, work it out. It might take a little time, but one thing that can really help is singing the virada. 1, boom. 1, boom. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There you have it. 2 classic viradas that can be played on a single surdo in a small group samba context. As always, I recommend that you take it slow and check out a lot of videos of surdo players playing a single surdo in a small group samba setting. See if you can identify these particular viradas in different videos or recordings. See if you can identify ones that are kind of similar to this but a little different, and start to increase your vocabulary of viradas. Have fun with it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.